Good morning. This is the channel Agronomy Blitz, accelerated insights for your agronomic advantage, the July 14th edition coming to you from South Central Nebraska. I am Tyler Brigdenhill. I'm a technical agronomist for the channel seed brand in South Central Nebraska. So let's dive in to these updates here, starting off with the growing degree days. And if you're on the road, I'll try and explain the map as best I can to you. So starting out here, what we did is we ran a scenario just like every other week that I've done the video, looking at an April 20th plant date through today, as well as a May 4th plant date. So essentially, hey, if I started the 20th of April, or if I waited 2 weeks later, what does those differences in growing degree days look like? So for my territory as a whole, minus one area that's about 30 units behind, which I'm assuming is right around Minden. That looks like Kearney County. Um, Pretty much a little bit to about 100 units ahead at Alma. So a lot of differences throughout the state of Nebraska. Some areas, anywhere from it appears about 60 units behind to 132 ahead if you're looking at the April 20th map. And then if we dive into the May 4th map, of course, same areas in trending ahead or behind. But some interesting differences. If you see down at Alma here in deep south central Nebraska, right at the Kansas border, Alma specifically 93 units ahead for the May 4th plant date compared to 100 units ahead for April 20th. So, you only gained about 7 units in starting 2 weeks earlier in that specific example for this specific week. But some interesting things to ponder as we think back on planning dates and decisions made during those times. If we fast forward into the total precipitation ranks map here, obviously a big change has occurred since we started looking at this. I think we started running this in April, and this is looking at April 1 through today. Uh, Total precipitation ranks by climate districts. So essentially, if you have a number, the closer you are to the number one, the wetter that climate district has been this year. And then the closer you are to 133, which is the total years of data that they're looking for this, the drier you are. So for South Central Nebraska, we were, I think, the worst. I want to say we were like 119 out of 133 there for a while. We're sitting at 62, so what you would call in the average rank of things out of the 133 years of data that they've looked at. But the state of Nebraska as a whole has turned very much a nice shade of green here in the last couple weeks specifically. Uh, South Dakota, Iowa, even Kansas minus Northeast Kansas being a little bit shade of brown. A lot of places looking really, really strong. And then you've got some folks here, further to the southeast experiencing some of the wettest conditions they've ever seen in 133 years. So very much starting to balance itself out, specifically for the Western Corn Belt. As we move on, again, we've talked about the corn growth cycle and the weekly nutrients required to grow 400 bushel corn. And again, I'm going to tell you, don't get wrapped up in growing 400 bushel corn. More or less use this as a specific, hey, if I'm at tassel, which we got a lot of corn either right at tassel, going to be tasseled, or past tassel at this point, right? If I'm in this window and I'm looking at nutrient utilization by the plant and what I'm trying to accomplish in that field, am I set up for success? Have I set myself up, and what do I need to be thinking about if I've got the ability to fertigate, if I've got, the ability to or to top dress, side dress, Y drop, whatever that looks like for your specific operation and management style. What do I have to do to really push this crop to the finish line yet? So there's a lot of things we're going to talk about from a disease and insect standpoint, but from a nutrition standpoint, you're talking about utilization of about 64% of your total nitrogen, about 60% of your total phosphate, 84% of your of your potassium, and then obviously only about 10% of your sulfur uptake. So the sulfur is really going to upkick here. We still have a fair amount of nitrogen left to go and get put on in some cases here to finish us out. But some interesting things to look at as we consider what we need to do to finish this crop out. And then what's going on in the corn world? So I alluded to this. There's a lot of fields right at tassel, or basically at tassel. I kind of think it's almost amusing. I think when we were setting up corn growth stages, there's a lot of times VT and R1 are pretty much the same time. You still will have some cultivars that shoot a tassel before they silk, but a lot of times we're seeing this within hours, if not simultaneously happening at the same time. So the big thing to consider is the amount of pressure from a pest standpoint. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of airplanes flying or already have been flying at this point from a fungicide aspect and also an insecticide aspect, which we'll talk about. But I also think we need to sit and consider the amount of water utilization by a plant at this time. You're talking about a plant utilizing 2500s to upwards of 33, 3300s per day per acre. So water requirements never higher in a corn plant than right now. You're talking about reproductive structures that are made, mostly of water. Silk's 90% water. So to make that process and to get those kernels fertilized, it requires a lot of water up front and a lot of management on the backside from us. Tar spot again. I expected to see some more confirmation, honestly, than what we have. So I'm almost wondering if we've had some maybe hold off of this or staving off of some of the infection points. But reality is it's still out there. And again, I point to this map because yes, yellow is confirmed counties. Just because you're in a gray or white county here does not mean you don't have tar spot in your fields. It simply means nobody's actually confirmed it. So be thinking about the conditions that we like for tar spots: 7 hours leaf wetness, 75% relative humidity, and 70-degree temps, sometimes up to 80. We've been above that, which probably has helped from a temperature standpoint, but it's something we still need to heavily monitor and make sure we're making the right decisions when it comes to what we're putting in the tank, specifically for tar spot control. Couple other disease updates. I know tar spot has gotten a lot of billboard and headline space as of late, so I did want to get a little update. Southern corn rust, again, these are confirmed updates. So seeing one county actually in Missouri that's had confirmation now. It's made considerable movement in Arkansas as of late as well. So again, I bring this up simply because we're one windstorm away for a lot of inoculum to be able to move into Kansas and then into Nebraska. So something to seriously think about. Feels like we've talked a lot of tar spot, a lot of northern corn leaf blight, and gray leaf spot. I don't necessarily say I'm raising the red flag for southern corn rust or for southern rust, but I think it's one that we need to continue to monitor because we saw last year how fast that can infect and affect the yield potential of our corn late in the season when we get into fill period. So something to consider and something to keep on top of mind. The other risk map that I have up here is simply for white mold and soybeans. I've had a lot of questions about, conditions were really good there in the end of June to potentially have this disease. I would tell you we're in a low risk environment right now for most of Nebraska. It would take a lot of shading in the row and a lot cooler environments to make a lot of inoculum happen, I feel like at this point. But it's something that I'm continuing to keep a close eye on when I'm walking soybean fields. Similarly, in the soybean fields, we've got, pretty much everybody's at full bloom. I've got a few fields starting to go into beginning pod. Uh, Utilizing quite a bit of water at this point, obviously in a vegetative mindset and mode in the soybean fields now. But as we begin to get into R4, when we start filling those pods, that's when we need to really consider how we are treating our irrigation management strategy for soybeans. I think a lot of times I feel like we probably water too much up until this point, and then we get to R4 and we go, my goodness, I've put a lot of water on these already. I just feel like we're going to do the same as we've done before, when actually I feel like that's the time we need to kick that management strategy into high gear and probably give them more water than what we have been originally. So be watching those fields, thinking about that management strategy, and thinking about how do I get those beans larger and retaining more weight once I get to harvest. I'm going to start doing a feature product every week. We're getting closer and closer to seed decision time frame, and walking plots and doing product tours and customer appreciation events. So I want some people to start thinking about products for next year. The first feature product I'm going to use is 20925 Smart Stack Pro Refuge in a bag. Medium plant type and ear height. Very, very versatile product. We use this across multiple acre types, handles dry land, limited irrigation, and full irrigation acres very, very efficiently. Does well on high pH. Really excellent agronomics behind this thing, and very high points on stay green and green snap tolerance. This is one of those products that you'll walk in the fall and it'll really stand out the amount of stay green that this one has in it late, even when you're harvesting the plot. And with that being said, again, just to cover, what water usage are we going through right now? I touched on this earlier, excuse me. Early tassel, R1, R2 going into silking here. You're using about 2500s to 3300s, average water use rate inches per day in the corn world. And then if you think about soybeans flowering R1 to R3, about 20 hundredths a day. But that's why I brought up what I did. When we get into that pod development and pod fill, that R4 to R6, that's when you almost kick it into high gear, and you should be watering 25 to 35 hundredths per day, and making sure we've got that sort of water in front of those soybeans so we can really impact seed size and seed weight. Hey, as always, I appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to either a seed professional, your local field sales representative, or your local technical agronomist. Have a great week, and we'll tune in next week.